Welcome to Dreams Inspire Reality Podcast with Tara Darnley, a podcast for creatives looking to turn their dreams into reality with practical strategic steps from everyday people and entrepreneurs who are living their best lives possible.
Hello, hello, hello. I am honored to have an amazing guest today, and I'm excited. It's going to be a lot of learning, laughter, and fun. She's one of my favorite people virtually, and I'm already laughing right now, right? Because we were talking before I started recording. So you guys are going to definitely learn a lot today. And today's special guest is Julian Kiganda. She is a transformational brand strategist, award-winning graphic designer, author, and speaker who specializes in creating compelling visual stories for an elite client base ranging from Fortune 500 corporations to multi-million-dollar nonprofits and small businesses. In addition to co-authoring the powerful personal development book, Whose Shoes Are You Wearing? 12 Steps to Uncovering the Woman You Really Want to Be, she has helped other authors write, publish, and successfully launch more than 10 books since 2014. As CEO of JBK Brand Design, her expertise in design, branding, and marketing has helped her clients land multiple million-dollar sponsors, sell out events, and increase product sales by 800% overnight, guys. A stellar roster of clients included Steve Harvey Royal Group, the African Union, and many others. I am so excited to have you on, Julian. How are you?
Yay! I'm excited to be here, Tara. I'm fantastic. If you look, anybody who calls me and asks me how I'm doing, you're gonna get that same answer, and they're just wondering what I am drinking. But I am fantastic. How are you?
And so am I. I'm fantastic. The first question I ask all my guests, Julian, is: are you living your dream life?
Oh my goodness, I'm living the life that I'm supposed to be living right now. I mean, I think with every one of us who is purpose-driven, who has big aspirations, who has big dreams and big goals, I think we're always striving to reach that next level of our dream. Because I really think when you're somebody who is a constant learner, you're a lifelong learner, and you're always looking to better yourself, I don't know that you ever actually get there. I think once you get to a certain level, you're always looking to reach the next level. So in a lot of ways, I have to say, I've definitely lived so many of the dreams and the goals that I've had for my life. But now I'm creating a new dream and new goals, using what I've done in the past as a foundation.
And that is so true. And most of my guests, they always say that, I'm either not there yet or I'm on my way. And like you said, I don't even think we're ever content with like where we at, right? So you're always striving to be better. So looking on the outside, I think you are, because not only are you living yours, but I see you're helping others do that every day. You're bringing people's dreams to reality every day through helping them write in their books, through their branding, through their messaging. And so I definitely think you're giving back a lot in helping us, get there. So thank you for serving the community well, ma'am.
Thank you. My pleasure. My pleasure.
You're welcome. I know your bio, it sounds fantastic, but in your own words, what do you do?
It's so funny because my daughter has asked me that several times. I have a 14-year-old daughter. Her name is Natalia. And so she's only ever known me as an entrepreneur. I only had one full-time job since I left college. And after that, I just jumped into entrepreneurship head first. And so she's only always known me by that. So technically, my degree is in graphic design. And I would say that is the foundation of the work that I do. But over the years, I have realized that what I do is so much more than design. And that's why, I coined that title, Transformational Brand Strategist, because in working with so many different clients over the years, I mean, small businesses, entrepreneurs, authors, nonprofits, Fortune 500 companies, government agencies, I mean, you name it. I've just come to understand that the work I do is really about being able to take somebody's message and their story and letting that resonate with people in a way that changes their lives. So for instance, this past weekend, or rather this month actually, I'm celebrating the 10th anniversary with the Northern Virginia Urban League, celebrating the 10-year anniversary of the Freedom House Museum. So the Freedom House Museum is based in Alexandria, Virginia, and it's a project that my company won 10 years ago. Actually, no, almost 12 years ago, because it took us about a year and a half to actually design and build it. And actually, it's a project technically we shouldn't have won, because before we won this museum project, before that, the largest exhibit I had designed was literally like a 24 by 36 trade show display for one of my clients. But what I came to understand, and I think this is something that we all need to really understand, because so often we have done a certain type of work in our lives and we don't realize that those same skills that we learned in that part of our lives are also transferable in other parts. And so for me, even if I hadn't actually technically designed a museum before, I knew as a designer and a communicator that I had the skills to transfer those skills I already had and create a built environment. Because really what it comes down to, and I tell people, I'm a professional storyteller. So by being able to professionally tell the story of how we're going to design this museum in the form of a proposal for this client, we ended up winning this project. Out of three, it was three firms that bid on the project. We were just asked to bid on it so that they could meet a government requirement, because the funding was from the government, so they required 3 bids. And the other two companies that were bidding on it, one was actually a group of former Smithsonian executives, and the other was the company that actually did the proposal to get the funding for the project. Wow. So we didn't find that out till like after we found out we won the project. But all that said, designing, building, writing the story of that museum, that project truly changed my life. And it helped me to understand that what I do is really more than just design. It's really telling stories that transform lives. I mean, that's really my goal in the work that I do.
Wow. You said that like it's just like something to, oh yeah, I designed a museum, right? Yeah. Like, it's no big deal, but that's a huge accomplishment, especially as a designer. Can you share with our audience, because I'm sure there are some branding experts out there or someone in your field that they're like, well, how did she get that contract, and what were some of the steps taken? Yeah. How did you even find out about that contract?
Oh yeah, absolutely happy to share. And I think I'm glad you asked that question, because I do think we kind of talked about this before. I think people do stuff and they don't tell you the how to. So I'm more than happy to share the how to.
Yes, share.
And quite honestly, a lot of it is just, there's this great quote by Whitney Young where he says, it's better to be prepared for an opportunity and not get it than to get an opportunity and not be prepared. And so when this opportunity came, I literally, like 2 weeks before I found out about this opportunity to design this museum, I had just met with my former professor I graduated from Marymount University in Arlington, Virginia. We had just met and we were just catching up. Well, he was one of my design professors. And so we were just catching up on what I was doing in my business and what he was doing. And he had told me, he said, if you're ever in need of anybody to help you design a museum or interactives for this museum, I do that now. So just let me know if those opportunities come up. So in that time in my business, I was actually rebuilding my business. I had a company before, but I had gone through a divorce that year, which was finalized. And so I was reinventing myself. And in doing so, I was also reinventing my business. And so part of reinventing myself and my business was building the team that I would need before I needed them. And so I think that is a key for a lot of entrepreneurs to keep in mind. Like, don't wait until the opportunities come. You want to make sure that you have your team in place before you need them. So for me, that was a major key. And so 2 weeks after having that conversation with my former professor, I get an email from a good friend of mine who we were both in an organization together called the Organization of Black Designers. And so he had sent out a message to all, his friends on the list saying, hey, this organization is looking for somebody to design this museum. And so I looked at it and I was just like, okay, well, this looks interesting. Let me take a look at it. And I forwarded it to my professor, and he was like, well, yeah, let's, take a go at it. And so the second thing I will say is, in addition to building your team before you need it, number two, get involved in your community, in organizations, connect with people in your industry, because I would not have gotten that opportunity had I not joined this organization and had all these relationships that I built from being part of that. And so I think that those two things are so critical. And I think sometimes we miss those as entrepreneurs because we tend to sometimes be very isolated. I don't know if you go through this, Tara, with the work that you do, but sometimes we're just really isolated.
Yes. Definitely.
Yeah. So, we got the opportunity to bid on the project. I met with the client. They looked really skeptical when they met me because I'm sure the youngest.
Who is she?
Exactly.
Why
Exactly. Very skeptical, especially when they saw that I didn't have the kind of experience and background that the other two companies did.
Wow.
And I just didn't let that deter me. So I'd say point number three is, don't be afraid to step. I mean, this was so far out of my comfort zone, I couldn't begin to tell you. Don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone as an entrepreneur and pursue opportunities that you may not feel qualified for, but they're going to stretch you. And that's why it's important to have a team that has skills where you may not be as strong. And to be able to do that, you have to know what you're good at and the things that you need to bring in people to do, so that you don't just jack everything up. but that was the third thing was, I was like, I walked in there, and I just said, look, I'd love to bid on this project. I'd like to know more about it. They were very skeptical, but they gave me all the information to put together the proposal. And so point number four is when we created the proposal for this project, we realized, you know what, we're a young company. They don't know us from Adam or Eve. But I know that we can really do justice to the story and tell it in a way that's going to move people. And so, and the thing is, one of the gifts that I have when it comes to design and branding is I can actually, just in a couple of conversations and talking with a client, I can build their brand in my head before I ever put anything on paper or on the computer. I'm a very visual person. And so in my head, after I saw the proposal and we started putting stuff together, I had already built it in my head. And so I think point number four is you have to be able, especially when you're going up against competition that, and I know you know this, Tara, because you've been in a couple pitch competitions, including Steve Harvey. Yeah. But when you're going up against competition, you have to sometimes bring more than your A game. You got to bring your A plus
Yes.
game, and just do something that's going to completely blow the client away. And so when we did our proposal, we actually designed it in the form of an 11 by 17 booklet that literally walked the client through the story. It was like a book about the museum. And we had actually done the research. We'd done a lot of research on the project before we even landed it. So they could see that we were really vested in this project. And we just poured our heart and soul into it. And that proposal is really what won us the contract. So the client told me later on, the CEO of the organization told me, she had to fight for us to win the project because the board was like, well, they're really young, but she was like, yeah, but they're really committed. And everybody else, I think they had taken it for granted that they were going to win. So they didn't put a whole lot of effort into their presentation. But the funny thing is, when I got the call that we had won the project, my first thought was, what the heck did I just get myself into?
Don't we always do that though?
Yeah.
We put in the work and then we're like, well, now it's time to execute.
Yeah. So just
how did you execute? Of course, we can't go into all the details, but
yeah.
What were some of the key things that, even mentally that you had to prepare for, making sure you executed where the job was done? And, this was a great way for you to even build more clientele from this one project. So, what were some of the things that you had to do?
Well, again, I think the key for me was having a team that had experience where I had blind spots. So that was a huge blessing. So we work with a number of different vendors on this project. And I would say my former professor, his name is Barry, he was instrumental in making sure that things flowed the way that they should, and doing a lot of the research. So his whole thing was all of the technical stuff and the research, and I really focused on the storytelling and the visuals. And then we brought on other team members to actually do the design and construction. There's a video in the museum. There is a couple interactives actually in the museum, because our whole thing was, we really wanted it to, and actually our mandate from the client was that this museum should appeal to everyone from ages 8 to 80. So just real quick, in terms of what the museum is about. So the Northern Virginia Urban League, they're based in Alexandria, Virginia, and the building that they're in at 1315 Duke Street was once the site of this was the actual building where this took place, but it was once the site of one of the largest, if not the largest, domestic slave trading company in the country. The men who started the business there, names were Isaac Franklin and John Armfield. When they retired in 1836 from the business, they were two of the wealthiest men in the country. That's how much money they made off of selling, Black people down south to pick cotton and to breed. I mean, it really tells a story of the people that went through this building. And, I think that the most interesting thing, it tells the story of the people that went through the building, but it also tells the story of the domestic slave trade. So a lot of people are very familiar with the transatlantic slave trade, when Africans were brought to America and then enslaved. But a lot of people don't realize that, when the transatlantic slave trade was outlawed, now it's just the slave trade that was outlawed, not slavery. So the transatlantic slave trade was outlawed in 1808. They could no longer bring slaves from Africa. So then they started actually breeding slaves here in the US. And there was a huge migration of slaves from the north to the south because of the farming of cotton. It became a major cash crop. And then also because a lot of these farmers north, a little further north in Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, this area, they had depleted the soil from tobacco farming. And so they no longer could farm their land, and they had all these surplus slaves that they had to now feed and clothe and all that. So they just chose to sell them. So the museum really tells a story of that whole time frame. And one of the owners of this business, he was actually the same guy. Now, Solomon Northup did not go through the same slave jail, but he was one of the owners was actually the guy who sold Solomon Northup down south in 12 Years a Slave, for those who have either seen the movie or read the book. So there's so much history in this building, and it's one of the only buildings actually that I know of in the country that it's actually where the act took place, where a lot of the museums that you'll go to, these are buildings that have been created to commemorate history, whereas this is where history actually took place. So when people go into this museum, and a lot of the exhibits are in the basement floor of the building where the slaves were actually held, the male slaves were actually held in this space. And so when you go there, you can see the original bars on the windows that were there when the slaves were down there. You definitely feel something there. You feel the souls that went through there. You feel a presence there. I wouldn't say it's scary, but you can definitely sense, what happened there. And it's really, in fact, I have to go find the pictures of what the place looked like before we actually, gutted it and completely transformed it. But in thinking about it, when I was there this weekend and I was talking to someone about how we built the museum, in thinking about it, I realized that that's what we did, that we really transformed that space to tell a story in a way that's going to touch people, but also, I think, leave them with hope. So it was, I tell people all the time, but that project it transformed my life, because that was the first time I really had a chance as an African who knows where I come from. So my father is Ugandan, my mother is Rwandese. I was born in Uganda, so I'm very proudly African. Black Panther, Wakanda forever. I had to put that in there. I had to throw that in there. But, I always taken it for granted that I knew where I came from. I never had to guess, where did my parents come from? I always knew. And so I think working on this project helped me to realize that there's a lot that I took for granted, and it helped me to really understand what slavery was about. And I think when you start understanding history, that's when you really start making sense of the present.
Yes.
Yeah.
You just, recanting that just gave me so much chills, right? Because the first thing that came to mind is when you align your purpose with your gift, right? That's exactly what you did. You prepared for it because it was aligned with your purpose, and God just knew, I don't know what your background is, but God just knew that you were meant to design this building, right? And you were going to put what he envisioned it to be. You did that and you executed it well. And that to me goes back to sometimes, even in business, we forget what our purpose is.
Yes.
We forget what our story is. And your first project aligned with all of that, right? Your first
totally
project aligned with everything, your purpose, your story, your background, everything. And that's something that you're able to look at whenever you want and just remember that. So that's like, see, we're dope. We're so dope. One thing you did mention earlier is, telling our story through branding. And again, with your gift, you're able to just, take whatever thought or idea your clients give you and just present that to them in a dynamic way where they might not have been able to envision that. I know even with me, I struggle with branding. So I leave that alone to my husband. But for those of us that, we're always looking for like tips and advice on how to properly brand our business. What are some of the key mistakes you see people make in terms of branding when they're just starting out that they can totally avoid? I know there's a lot.
I'm about to say, girl, how much time do we have?
I know there's a lot, but even like the top 3 things. The top 3.
So I will say, I think one of the top mistakes I see people make, and this drives me crazy to no end, is that they see somebody else's brand and they try to duplicate it. I see that all the time. Oh my goodness.
We go through that every day, but that's another story.
Oh, I know. I'm sure. I am so sure. But here's the thing, and I used to coin this term called branding from the inside out. And the reason I coined that is because a lot of people have this misunderstanding what branding really is. They think it's your logo or your PR campaign or, your photo or, just something very superficial. Yeah, but the reality is,
break it down.
This is why I love talking about branding, because it hurts my heart. To see people doing it so wrong. But what I've come to understand and what I hope people take from this podcast is that branding is really about who you are at your core and the culture that you are going to build from what comes from your soul. Like I have this thing, when I say I build brands with soul, because I realize that, you can't, trying to make things look pretty when they're all ugly on the inside is like putting lipstick on a pig. Like that really what it is, right? So you have organizations that do that all the time. You have organizations do that all the time. So I remember when Comcast tried to rebrand their cable service, and I don't know if they were as bad as they were in the rest of the country, but Comcast used to have some horrible cable service, customer service. And so it was so bad that they said, okay, we're going to rebrand. And so they rebranded to Xfinity, thinking that nobody would know it's still Comcast. Tell you, they got so much flack because even though they had changed the name, the customer service was still just as bad. The service was just as bad.
Wow.
And so this is a mistake a lot of people make, is that not only are they trying to be like somebody else, but they're trying to recreate something that did not come from them,
Experience.
So yeah. And it drives me absolutely bonkers. I think that's number one. I think in order to create a really strong brand that's going to stand the test of time, even these bigger brands that you see that have been out for a while, like I'll give an example of one of my favorite brands right now, which is LinkedIn. I am in love with LinkedIn. And I will tell you, if you look at So, the founders had this vision to create a platform, social media platform for professionals. And right now they're still really the only ones in the game, which is just
Sure.
brilliant to me.
Sure.
But when the LinkedIn platform started out, it was just very stodgy. And I've been on the platform for years and didn't really use it much because it was just it wasn't very user friendly, right? It was really just like having an online resume. And then I almost feel like when the current CEO, his name is Jeff Weiner, took over, this guy, oh my goodness, he actually interacts with people on LinkedIn. He's always commenting on employee posts, and when he's mentioned or LinkedIn is mentioned, they're very responsive. And so he just has this great, in fact, he was interviewed by Oprah Winfrey on Super Soul Sunday because he is just that much of a leader that I think more people need to emulate. Just very down to earth, very empathetic, very real. And I've started seeing the culture of LinkedIn because it's coming from the top. And so I think he has really contributed from converting or changing or transforming the brand of LinkedIn to one that's stodgy and just, very just overly corporate, to one where it's now really, if you're on LinkedIn, it's just more of a community and it's a lot more user friendly, and people are really providing a lot of value on there. So I think that's a great example of building a brand from the inside out. I have a feeling when he came in, he was like, okay, let's look at what isn't working and let's make it work better and make it more user friendly and more community oriented, because that's how he is. I think that's number one. I think number two, people try to do too much with their brand. Like, they try to say they are everything under the sun. And if it's not everything under the sun, I am a result-oriented, solution-driven. I mean, all this jargon that means absolutely nothing.
What does that mean again? Who are you? What do you do?
Right. And they finish talking and you're more confused about what they do than before you didn't know anything about what they do.
Yeah.
So I see a lot of that too. And I think people tend to hide behind words.
Yeah.
But when it comes to branding, again, look at Nike. The simpler, the better. It really comes down to, if you cannot say what you do in one sentence or a few words, then you got to keep working until you can condense it down, because then you're not clear about what you do yourself. So that's two. And then three, the other thing that really drives me crazy about, looking at some of the brands that are out there, is that they're inconsistent. I'll get a business card that looks different from the website, that looks different from the brochure, that looks different from the, trade show display. I mean, everything, there's nothing that matches or is working together or it's consistent. The messaging is all over the place. So I definitely think that's another mistake that people make. And then I would say the last thing would be, people not being willing to invest money in building their brand the right way. So I know there's a lot of do-it-yourselfers out there. Fiverr is one that people talk about all the time. I think Fiverr is good for some things, but if you are trying to build, and this is a quote from, one of my friends and mentors, Ronnie Tyler, and I love this quote because she says, "You can't build an empire off of free stuff."
Sure.
And so I think people are trying to build stuff for free or next to nothing, and that's understandable if that's how you have to start out. But as you start growing, you have to be willing to invest money to look like you're a company people want to spend money with. You can't expect to look like a $5 business and have people pay you $50,000 to provide a product or service for them. There is a level of trust that comes with having a professional, polished image. And so I would say another mistake I see people make is, their brand looks like Fiverr designed it. And they're not really willing to work with a professional to get them to the next level. And I think, at the end of the day, when it comes to our businesses as entrepreneurs, if we're really looking to grow, because I know for me, the times when my business has grown the most is when I have invested money in myself, when it came to coaching and consulting, and then also in my business. So if you're not willing to invest in yourself, in your business, and in your brand, you can't really expect to grow the way that you could. And even if you do experience some level of growth, because there's so much competition out there, if you don't have a really well established and very unique or easily identifiable brand, those copycats are going to be able to, take your market share pretty easily, because you're going to look like the next Tom, Dick, or Harry. Why are they going to spend money with you here when they can get the same thing over there? So branding really is about creating a reputation that precedes you, and that also it leaves a legacy.
Girl, wow. Like everything you said is what literally we just went through last year, right? And
Mm,
in terms of Brandon, like, and I remember I shared this with your sister that we're going through something where, our product was knocked off, right? And
mm,
at first, it's like you're a parent to your brand, right? So you're
yeah,
freaking out, like, that's my baby. Oh my
yeah.
gosh. And at first, I legit, like, I was emotional about it. I was in my feelings. Thank God for my husband. He had to, like, slap me back to reality, like, you don't need to worry. You've spent the last 3 years building a brand. You weren't
Yes,
building a
product.
there's something you were playing with. It wasn't a
Yep,
hobby. You were building
yep,
a brand. Like,
yep,
people know who you are. They know what you built, and
yep.
people like, know, and trust your brand enough now that when the copycats come, it's okay. It's all fine.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what That's exactly what, like what you said. If you build something where people are able to look at both and there's no distinction,
Mm-hmm.
then you have a problem.
Yep.
When people know, like, okay, that looks better, I'm going to spend my money here. It did not hurt us at all. Like, it
Mm,
actually made us stand out more.
mm.
We got more sales because of it, because now people are like, okay, this looks like a knockoff. This one looks like the real
The
deal.
original,
I'm
exactly.
gonna this. I think this is safe enough for my baby,
Yes.
and so people were investing more in it. We started getting more retailers coming on
Wow.
because it's like, okay, now parents are gonna want a branded product, and we need to get
Mm,
that branded product.
yes.
And so that's what we created this whole new category
Yes.
that wasn't there when we started. There was nothing called a teeth and mitten, and parents were like, "What is this?" Retailers like, "What is this?" This is
Mm,
not coming. This is not coming in our store. How are we going to explain this? But we pushed for it. So every point you just made is so profound and true. And sometimes, like you said, when we're starting out, we start cheap, right?
yeah.
Because some of us can only afford 5R, and
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. But like you said, at some point you need to level up.
Yes.
Simple as that. If you want to compete with the big dogs, you got to
Yep.
level up. You got to invest in yourself.
You
So
do.
everything you said was true, guys.
Mm,
So if you're listening, make sure you key those down and start saving. Like, in your business, what we do is start putting away some money, like, every now and then. Like, okay, I'm gonna put $5 away this week, and it could be as like small as $5, right?
mm,
$5 away on my branding, and by the end of the week or the end of the month, just put that money aside. And there are even coaches that will work with you on your budget. They'll
mm,
have payment plans, and that's okay. You put clothes on payment plan. You could put your business, so there's
mm,
different things that we could do. So everything you touched on was so point on. And my
mm,
last question for you, in terms of story, right? Because I think this is something we all struggle with when starting a brand, like how to properly just articulate our story to our
mm,
clients. Like, how
mm,
do we tell our story where we create that culture within our branding?
mm. That's a really good question. Um, and that kind of leads me to what I'm working on now. So I just launched, as you know, a 16-day Write Your Book Challenge, because what I came to understand after working with so many authors was that a lot of times people don't know how to tell their story, and for a number of different reasons. So I actually just put up a post today, just listing some of the reasons I have found that people have a problem telling their story. So there's perfectionism. There's a fear of insulting a friend or family member and how you tell your story. Some people don't feel like they have much of a story to tell. Some people are not clear about what to do next when it comes to telling their story, or they're just afraid to speak their truth. So, a lot of times people talk about, okay, I want to build my brand and tell my personal brand story. I want to write my book. Um, but the reality is, it's going to be very difficult for you to do any of that if you're not clear on who you are and what story you want to tell. Because anything that you put out there is not going to be authentic. And one of the number one rules of branding, especially now, where people can, look you up and find out whether or not you lying, to them, about who you really are just by Googling you right quick or checking you out on social media. The number one rule of branding right now is really authenticity. And so in order to be authentic, you have to really figure out, who you are, what is your why, because if you don't have that, and the why is really your purpose. So if you're not clear about that, don't even bother trying to sell yourself to anybody, because this is how people end up with a whole bunch of jargon about being solution oriented, and we come up with all these amazing technical whatever. you know because they're not clear and it comes across. So I would say the first thing that people have to do is get really clear about who they are, what is their purpose. And that's actually one of the reasons why my sister and I wrote our book, Whose Shoes Are You Wearing? Because that's part of the intention of that book, is to get people to really reflect on, well, who am I and what is my purpose? So I'd say that's number one. And then number two is like, once you figure that out, I always tell people you got to really brainstorm. Like, I think too many times we get stuck in this fear of not being perfect, that disease of perfectionism. And so either we never get started, or again, we go back to hiding behind all these words that sound good, but don't really say anything. And so, I always tell people just brainstorm. Brainstorming is actually something that I learned in school, even when we came up with design concepts, because again, design is really about telling a story. And so our job was to just brainstorm a whole bunch of ideas until we came up with what worked. So, sometimes you just got to brainstorm and then kind of sift through things and see what works for you, sleep on it, talk to people who know you. Some of the best feedback I have gotten from my business and how to brand myself has been from asking other people, well, how do you see me? What three words? This is a question that I actually ask my clients when I work with them. What three words would you want to use to describe your brand? And the words should be adjectives. So, cultural, it could be fun, it could be lively, it could be corporate, but whatever that is, you want to have three words that you'd want people to use to describe your brand. Because as I think it was Jeff Bezos who said, your brand isn't what you say about you, it's what other people say about you when you're not in the room. But even though you can't control what they say,
right?
and that's it, right? So even if you can't control what people say about you when you're not in the room, you can still direct the conversation by being very intentional about your messaging and how you brand yourself in public.
I don't want this to end, but unfortunately we got to end. So we're definitely going to have you on again. And I told you that before we even started, like, there's so much things we could talk about, right?
There are.
You are one of those people that you not only speak on different topics, but you actually do it, you live it. And so we're definitely going to have you on again to just talk about a whole lot of other things.
Absolutely.
Author, because there's a lot of us out there who are aspiring authors, and we want to know how to you just broke it down for us, so we're definitely going to have a continued episode. I want to do a fun question Q&A that I have with my guests, and you don't get to think about your answers too long.
Okay.
So it's going to be fun and quick. Who's your favorite entrepreneur?
My favorite entrepreneur. Oh my goodness. I think right now it had to be Barbara Corcoran. I love Barbara Corcoran from Shark Tank. I think she is just spunky. She's really smart. She's very gutsy and she's very real, but she's also very empathetic. I love her. I quote her all the time. I follow her on Twitter and wherever else she is, mostly on Twitter. She posts a lot of great stuff, and she's just very in your face. I really like her.
Last book you read?
The last book I read was The One Thing. Oh my goodness, by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. Anybody who has not read that book needs to read that book, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you are a parent, whether you are just somebody trying to figure out what it is that you want to do with your life. Read the book, The One Thing. It was actually recommended to me by two of my friends in the span of 3 days. And so for me, that's when I said, okay, God, I hear you. I'm going to get the book. So I got it. Amazing.
I got to get that book.
Yes.
What is your favorite business tool?
My favorite business tool, that would have to be Teamwork is one of my favorite. I use so many, but I'll say teamwork. So teamwork is a project management site, and I use it to manage all my client projects, and it's a lifesaver. I don't have to keep up with emails. I don't have to figure out where my files are. I don't have to figure out what the schedule is. It is all in one place. So I love teamwork.
And what is your last business win or your latest business win?
My latest business win? Well, I'm not ready to talk about this yet. It is a major win, but I usually don't talk about major client projects until after they're done. So I'm going to hold off on that. But I will say, in terms of my biggest one that I'm really excited about right now, in addition to this client that I've started working with recently, is just launching this Write Your Book Challenge. I've been working on this project for, gosh, I would say probably a year, but really intensely started working on it in like September of last year, because I was just so passionate about helping other people tell their stories. But I think for me, the biggest thing was being able to follow through. I've been talking about it for a long time. And, as you know, a lot of people out there with great intentions that don't follow through. And I said, this is not going to be that year for me. So that for me is a major win. And then just seeing all of the ahas and the excitement that's happening in the community that we built for this challenge is, oh my gosh, it does my heart so much good.
And how can we join that challenge? How can we find you? Because
Yes.
I'm sure everyone's going to want to find you after this. So how can we find you if we need Brandon help? We need you to come save our business. How can we find you?
So you can find me on every platform at Julian B. Kiganda. At Julian B. Kiganda. And then in terms of the challenge, just go to writeyourbbookchallenge.com. That's writeyourbbookchallenge.com. We're using the hashtag WriteYourBook. And so the challenge started on February 19th. It ends on March 6th. But just based on feedback that I'm getting, I may run it again. And it's actually going to be leading up to a very comprehensive course where I teach people with a whole bunch of other amazing experts how to write, publish, promote, and use their book to build their brand. So I'm truly excited about that.
I'm about to go in the group right now. I'm about to have to join that group. It sounds fun. And even if you're not even ready to like write your book or you're not sure of your story, I think it's a great way to just join in on the conversation, see what others are talking about,
yes.
see what challenges they're having, that may help you. So be sure to follow Julian. Again, it was so much fun. We definitely again for sure, because of the wealth of knowledge. I'm so honored to know you. I'm so honored to just, you're doing amazing. Like, you guys are just killing it. You guys are You guys are inspiring. And I'm just so honored to know you, girl.
Oh, thank you. Well, that definitely goes both ways, because you doing some amazing things yourself, Miss Tara.
I do a little something. But for sure, guys, make sure you follow her and make sure you follow us at Dreams Inspire Reality on all platforms. Subscribe to the podcast. Leave us a review. We want to hear about you. We want to hear whatever feedback you have for us. If you have any questions for Julian, be sure to follow her. You can answer your question, or you can leave us the questions and we'll be sure that she answers that for you. Until next time, dream big. Hey guys, let's give a quick thanks to our sponsor, Dreams Inspire Reality. Are you unsure of the steps needed to turn your dreams into reality? Have you been sitting on that product idea and not sure how to bring it to market? We've successfully launched tons of products and distribute all over the globe. Let us help you get unstuck and take your idea to market with strategic advice and practical steps. Schedule a consultation today at dreamsinspirereality.com.
Dreams inspire